She is a trophy paraded through Rome. But she will choose her own end. Rome. Summer 46 BC. The sun is so hot that the stone pavement is smoking. The city is exploding with celebrations of Gaius Julius Caesar's triumph. The streets are so crowded that it is impossible to raise your hand without touching your neighbor. People are shouting and pushing forward. Suddenly, the sound of horns can be heard. It is the beginning of a procession that will be remembered for centuries. Horsemen in golden helmets emerge from around the corner, followed by legionnaires in blood-red cloaks. Chariots are laden with trophies, silver from temples, statues of gods, fabrics from distant lands. This is not just a parade. It is a theater of power. And behind them is the main spectacle. Prisoners. Their backs are bent, but their heads are raised. Because even here, it is the only way to say, I am not broken yet. Among them is she. Her hair is disheveled, and heavy bronze shackles glisten in the sun like jewelry. Plutarch wrote, a trophy in the hands of Rome must be visible and beautiful, so that the humiliation is even deeper. Today she is that trophy. Some laugh, some throw clods of earth, some stare coldly, as if at an exhibit. You do not yet know her name. But know this. Her story is not about Roman glory. It is a story about how a person had everything taken away from them, and about whether it is possible to destroy a person if they are ready to decide their own fate. She walked in chains, and even in the roar of the crowd, it was clear where her gaze was directed, forward, to the golden chariot, to the man who destroyed her world, Gaius Julius Caesar. His name was known from the Atlantic to the sands of Egypt. To some, he was a hero who brought order in Roman law. To others, he was a horror that came at night with torches, swords, and catapults. In the Senate, he was called a brilliant strategist. In the squares, he was called the embodiment of Roman glory. But behind these titles lay another side, cold, calculated cruelty. Without it, he might never have become a legend. Historians wrote, Caesar believed in the power of fear no less than in the power of law. From childhood, he was taught that true victory was not only to capture land, but to break the will of the defeated so that even their children would be afraid to dream of rebellion. When he gained power over a distant province, he saw only two things there: trophies and slaves. For him, triumph was the pinnacle of glory. The day when thousands of eyes witness the humiliation of those you have conquered. And it is not gold or statues that speak loudest, but living captives. That was when he first saw her. The king's daughter, on the ramparts of the besieged capital, looked down at the Roman legions with such pride that he remembered that look. When the city fell, he did not give her to his soldiers. Not out of mercy, out of calculation. She was to become the face of his triumph, a living symbol of a broken state. He wanted all of Rome to see. Even the highest can be brought to their knees. But he did not yet know that in this game there is a limit to humiliation beyond which a person is willing to go even to death. She was born in a palace, behind high stone walls that separated the ruling family from the rest of the city. Her father was the king of a small but wealthy kingdom on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea, formally independent, but already under the shadow of Rome. From childhood, she knew that her life was determined by her family's status. She was taught to read and write, history, and local laws. She knew how to accompany her father on horseback during holidays and how to receive ambassadors. Her world was limited but safe. But Rome was steadily moving closer. Year after year, the legions annexed neighboring lands. It was only a matter of time before it was their turn. When the eagle standards appeared on the horizon, the city began to prepare for the siege. The gates were reinforced, grain was stockpiled, and some of the people were evacuated. She stood on tiptoe next to her father when she first saw the Roman camp. The legions moved quickly without pause. In a few days, the city was surrounded by palisades and moats. They held out for the first few weeks. Then came the food shortage. Then water, after the aqueduct was destroyed. At night rumors spread. Other capitals had surrendered without a fight, and were still devastated. When the gates were breached, the defense collapsed in a matter of hours. Soldiers killed those who fought and took alive those who could be sold or used. Her mother was dragged to one side, her father to the other. She didn't even have time to scream. She was seized in the chaos and taken to the main square. Ruins, smoke. And him, the commander. He stood in the center, surrounded by officers. He looked at her coldly, without a hint of emotion. There was nothing accidental about that look. He had already decided what to do with her. From the moment the city fell, she was no longer the king's daughter. To Rome she was a trophy, a rare one, a valuable one who could not be given to ordinary soldiers. High-ranking prisoners were kept for public ceremonies. This was clearly spelled out in the tradition of triumph. Valerius Maximus wrote, "The beauty and origin of the defeated adorn victory no less than gold." Wide, polished bronze shackles were placed on her hands. The glint in the sun was to be visible from afar. She was left in the same clothes she had been wearing on the ramparts, but torn. Her jewelry was torn off and thrown into the dust. She was placed in the center of the column of prisoners, a place for those who represented the defeated state. The legionnaires mocked her in the broken language of her homeland, repeating the names of gods and rulers, but with derision. She remained silent. The road to Rome was a test of endurance and humiliation. During the day, the roads were scorching hot. At night, they were guarded by a detachment. Their food consisted of a handful of grain and a piece of bread. Water was only for drinking. The dead were left by the side of the road without stopping. The closer they got to Rome, the more spectators there were. In the villages, women came out to the gates, children ran after them, laughing or throwing stones. For them it was entertainment seeing the defeated. On the outskirts of the city, they were not allowed in right away. The prisoners were locked in dungeons near the forum or the arena, preparing for the spectacle. There, a guard examined her for the first time. He checked to see if she had lost too much weight or had any serious wounds. He ordered that she be washed, dressed, and given shackles suitable for the ceremony. This was not preparation for honor. It was preparation for the role of the central exhibit of a spectacle that all of Rome was to see. The next morning, servants descended into the dungeon with buckets of cold water. This was not mercy. It was preparation. In Rome, triumph is not just golden statues. It is also living trophies, displayed in the proper manner. Plutarch wrote, "Even the defeated must look in a way that emphasizes the greatness of Rome." Water was poured directly onto the stone floor. The cold burned her bruises and scratches. She was ordered to undress. 2 female slaves from the commander's house began to rub her skin with coarse sponges, scraping off dirt and blood. The task was simple. Tomorrow, when thousands of people looked at her, they should see not a broken person, but a valuable exhibit. Then they brought her clothes, not formal attire but a thin, worn tunic. It did not hide her exhaustion or the marks left by the chains. When she reached out to put it on, the guard stopped her. They brought other chains, wide, polished bronze. These were made especially for triumphs. They were meant to shine in the sun and reflect the light, attracting attention. Her hair was combed and gathered so that her face was exposed. One guard said, "People need to see who you are." It wasn't out of concern. It was part of the show. Her face became another trophy alongside the weapons and statues. Then she was transferred to a separate detachment. This is where the special ones were kept. The sons of military leaders, priestesses of subjugated cults, and wives of noble warriors. Everyone knew that tomorrow, their every step would be part of a script of humiliation. At night, even underground, the noise of the streets could be heard. Lanterns burned near the forum. She sat in the darkness, feeling the cold metal on her wrists. Tomorrow all of Rome would see her. But it would no longer be her. It would be an image created for someone else's victory. The morning of triumph began before dawn. Shouts of orders, the clang of weapons, the pounding of horses' hooves. A rumble rolled through the narrow streets. The prisoners were lifted out of the dungeons and led outside. After weeks in darkness, the bright light burned their eyes. Ahead of them was the Via Sacra. It was decorated with laurel garlands, woven ribbons, and trophies from the conquered cities. The procession moved according to ancient tradition. First came horsemen in golden helmets, then chariots with loot, silver, fabrics, statues of gods taken from temples. Next came legionnaires in red cloaks with laurel branches. And only after them came the prisoners, living trophies. Her every step was accompanied by the clanking of chains. In Rome, this sound was part of the performance. It was meant to remind everyone that these were the defeated. In the crowd, some laughed, some threw dust, some threw dried flowers. Others just stared silently, as if at rare prey. Her mother was walking nearby. They met each other's gaze when the chains allowed, trying to keep the same rhythm. But near the forum, the guards separated them. One soldier pulled her forward. Another led her mother aside. She looked back. The glint of helmets, the backs of soldiers, and her mother's hand, stretched out to her for a moment before disappearing behind the rows of guards. This movement was etched into her memory more deeply than the roar of the crowd or the music. The noise in the forum became deafening. The commander on his chariot, mountains of gold and treasure, and living symbols of destroyed peoples. Among them was she, no longer the king's daughter, a trophy, the property of the victor. After the procession ended, she was not taken back to the dungeon. Together with other high-ranking prisoners, she walked through narrow streets to the foot of Palatine Hill, where the most influential people in Rome lived. Behind high stone walls stood the villa of a patrician, an ally of the commander. According to the law, prisoners were spoils of war. They could be sold or given away. She became part of her owner's private collection. Like gold, like statues, like a trophy. On the first day, she was given clean clothes made of fine fabric. She was fed more than she had ever been since her capture. She was even served sweet wine. This was not mercy, it was an investment. A valuable trophy had to remain healthy and attractive. A room with marble floors and a view of the inner garden with a colonnade. The doors are locked every night. The windows are narrow, escape is impossible. The slaves who look after her speak only Latin and look at her as if she were part of the inventory. She quickly understood her role. Her master showed her off to his guests, senators, merchants, military men. It was a display of prestige. Look, I own not only their gold but also their people. The guests looked at her longer than they looked at silver or expensive vases. They evaluated her facial features. They discussed her origins, as if she were a rare exhibit. She did not perform any physical work. Her function was to be a silent reminder of the power of Rome. And although the chains were gone, the space of the villa was the same chain. Only now it was invisible. The banquet that evening was a spectacle. Influential senators, 2 former consuls, and a representative of the Praetorian Guard gathered at the villa. The atrium smelled of wine, roasted meat, and incense, the scent of Roman victory. Slaves glided between the couches, pouring wine and tossing fragrant chips into the braziers. The laughter of the guests rang out, interspersed with the clinking of cups. It was not just an evening, it was a demonstration of power. When the wine had loosened tongues, the host gave a sign. 2 female slaves led her into the center of the hall. She was dressed in a transparent fabric that emphasized her body more than it concealed it. Bronze shackles on her wrists, the same ones she had worn during the triumph.